Yes, so I'm going to talk about the Sea Urban Water project on behalf of a team that did this project with me. Actually, I'm not anymore the leader of this project because it has finished in December last year. And yeah, so it's a bit sad. We need to see what's next. But on the other hand, I can present today to you the final results of this project. So first of all, to start, and here I try to reconnect to the morning that we had already some presentations on this topic. I will pass it a bit quickly because I think we are mostly familiar. But just to contextualize this project, I will start to talk about green and blue infrastructures in urban area. But first of all, I would like to talk about the urbanization process and the impact of urbanization on the urban water cycle. So here you see an illustration of the natural water balance with different arrows. So the arrows are blue, indicating like the natural flows, and they have different sizes. So you see, usually we have an input of precipitation to an area, and the major flow usually, well, this is hardly very much generalized, is evapotranspiration. You have a vegetation, then the next one is infiltration, and the smallest flow is the runoff. So this is more a natural condition, very generalized. But when we look into an urban water balance, it looks differently. So you see the colors of the arrows have changed and the sizes have changed. We have more arrows as well. So we have a highly artificial system of water flows in urban areas. We assume that there is still the same precipitation. Also, this might also change in urban areas. We have a highly reduced evapotranspiration and also infiltration because of the surface sealing, because less vegetation is present. And we import a lot of water as a new inflow to the city, which together with a reduced infiltration and evapotranspiration will lead to larger runoff volumes, poor quality runoff from the surfaces, but also water discharge, wastewater discharge from the used imported water mainly. And so this balance is problematic. It has different deficiencies. And the idea, and now this is now another concept that I want to talk about, the idea of a water sensitive city, so a city that has nature-based solutions and is thinking of green infrastructure, aims at returning these water flows of the water balance to a more natural state again. You see there are now again blue arrows in it, and the orange areas have become smaller. And you see some cycles. So the idea is with a water-sensitive city or nature-based solutions in cities and green infrastructure in cities from a water perspective, now to increase infiltration again, to increase evapotranspiration through the unsealing of soil, through introduction of vegetation elements. The idea is also to reuse wastewater, or water is reused. Also the stormwater is reused with the aim to reduce the surface runoff and the wastewater discharge from cities. So then in the end, we also have less runoff or more natural partitioning of runoff from the precipitation, which leads out of the city. But this water-sensitive city actually can do much more than just looking at this water perspective. We can have much more benefits from it. We have heard in the morning presentations talking about microclimate. So when we increase evapotranspiration, we can also increase microclimate regulation, so reducing heat island effects, for example. We can have, by introducing vegetation, also ecological biodiversity benefits by selecting pollinator plants, for example. And we can also have additional social benefits. So, improving air quality, for example, create new recreational spaces. So this is actually what is beyond this idea. I'm showing you this because our, let's say, point of departure was from this water perspective, from a hydrological perspective, but not limited to this perspective. And this is very important, I believe, that we look into a multifunctionality of these solutions. However you want to call them, they need to be multifunctional, especially in urban context, but basically anywhere. Now, what would then a water-sensitive city look like? So in the first place, it would reproduce this natural hydrological cycle, at best close to something that was previous to urbanization. So it is about mitigating urban runoff in quantity, reducing the quantity, and reducing also the quality problems. But it should be more. It should be minimizing the other impacts of urbanization, like the impact of urban heat islands. It should be a maximization and landscape integration. So thinking of cities and in a wider context, a regional landscape context. And it should maximize social and environmental values. So this is actually then what we are talking about is the green and blue infrastructure. I will just use green infrastructure, but I always talk about blue as well, which is in the end a planned network, which is strategically planned, composed of the different areas. We had heard a definition earlier on in this seminar, but the important part is that it is sort of a network that is strategically planned. That sounds quite interesting because we are still not doing this. We haven't done this before, and we are still not doing it in a region, really in a strategically planned manner, with the aim to deliver several ecosystem services. Here we are talking about multifunctionality, benefits to humans, benefits to nature. This is a broad variety of services which relates to this. So this network then of different green and blue spaces then can improve environmental conditions and improve also the health and quality of life of citizens. So this is the idea of green and blue infrastructure. Now I picked this picture. There are many illustrations of green infrastructure, but here we have also some other well-known concepts included. Here are the nature-based solutions mentioned. There's natural infrastructure. There's the low-impact development mentioned. And like in the previous presentation, we also had from like this variation from gray to green. It's similar in this case, and I like it because it helps to contextualize a bit what we are dealing with in cities. So we are somehow dealing with natural infrastructure, which may still exist as little patches or surrounding areas of cities. But we are very much dealing with, which is called here enhanced assets or engineered assets, which are associated to low impact development and sometimes also nature-based solutions. But in cities, when we are in very densely urbanized areas of cities, then we have a lot of green or in between green-gray solutions. So this picture is where we are dealing is, and I will talk or what we looked at in this project, where mostly what is here under the low impact development context. And yes, so the engineering assets in this case, they are helping to reestablish a more natural-like water balance, but they are not providing habitat, for example. They're not providing, they don't have any habitat function usually. And they have very low social functions as well. In general, not always, but they are more engineered and have more single-purpose visions. Now this as a background, and now I'm coming to the Sea Urban Water project. Explain a little bit this context. So first of all, what kind of project was this? It's an interesting format in Germany. We have these funding schemes called research groups. In this case, it was actually a junior research group. So the Federal Ministry of Education and Research in Germany funded originally for 5 years. Now it was extended to a 6th year because of the COVID pandemics, research groups. In this case, research groups in the context of research for sustainability. And they had to be inter and transdisciplinary working. The intention of the government in Germany is to create capacities with these research groups. So I was funded as a group leader of Sea Urban Water, And I had 4 PhD students who were funded in this project, fully funded. So this is a large project. It's 2.5 million euros over originally 5, now the 6 years. So a lot of manpower dedicated to this work, and that's why we could also produce some very beautiful things in this project. So strangely, this group used to be based in Darmstadt, actually. In the last 2 years, it was based in Hanover, where I moved for a new professorship, a new appointment. And we carried out our research in Costa Rica, where our case study is. So that's a bit strange, but it depends actually, it related to my research focus on Latin America that I had already before this context, and the strong exchange with Latin American countries that I had already before. And the research group was composed of, well, everyone was Spanish speaking, and more than half of the team was from Latin America, actually. So the PhD students were coming from Latin America mostly, doing their PhD in Germany, but doing research in Costa Rica through travels, field trips, and we had a lot of exchange events in Costa Rica, workshops, but also in Germany with partners from Costa Rica. So the main objective of this project was to develop, co-design, and implement nature-based solution in urban watersheds. And here, well, the IUCN definition of nature-based solutions, I'm not repeating it. I hope you are aware of it. And now our understanding, we relate nature-based solutions to green infrastructure. So we think of nature-based solution as the individual object scale solutions, which compose together with other elements, natural, semi-natural elements, a green infrastructure. So there are measures to improve or to develop a green infrastructure network of a city. This is something that happens through several spatial scales. And our point of view, we work, as it says, in urban watersheds, highly urbanized watersheds. So we are talking about retrofitting measures. So available space is a very important criteria. Different land covers define different uses. Of course, build-up area, we did not demolish any build-up areas. So we have taken them, but there are some areas which are not built up, which are not developed, or which are still natural-like. So this depended on this land cover. We had different opportunities to develop nature-based solution. We talk about connectivity in an ecological sense, but also in a social sense when we define nature-based solution to improve the green infrastructure. The spatial configuration is related to this. We have areas where there is lack of green space, both from a social perspective, so lack of recreational areas, but also from an ecological perspective. We talk about multi-level. We work at the watershed level, but we look at the neighborhood level and several regional levels within the watershed. Multi-target is as I mentioned, the entry point is water, but as we define and co-design solutions with people living in a neighborhood, their priority is not water usually or often. So we need to integrate different targets. It could be recreation, it could be traffic reduction, or reduction of air pollution, or something else. And this altogether is defining the multifunctionality. We look at a landscape level in the end to define different solutions which are part of the green infrastructure of the area. Okay, here is now the area of our case study. So we are in Costa Rica, Central America, and we have chosen a watershed which is part of the larger metropolitan area of the capital city, San Jose of Costa Rica. It's a Quebrada Seca watershed. And this watershed we developed, and this is what is marked here in red, in the red square. We established a so-called real-world lab. So this is our transdisciplinary approach. We defined, it was kind of a competition among the municipalities. You can see the different colors in the watershed, 5 municipalities sharing. Oh no, they're not showing the municipality. In white are the municipality names. Different municipalities sharing this watershed, and they proposed real-world labs in the context of the project. Was in the first year, and we decided with different steps for one area where we would in the end implement nature-based solutions, and we would work more closely with the citizens. So this is in one area, but we look in different analysis and modeling steps also at the different spatial scales. So starting from the street level, the neighborhood level, the regional, and so the regional sub-watershed levels, and the watershed in the end. And the aim is to what we learn from this these different spatial scales, so from the in-depth work in the real-world lab, and then modeling at different regional scales to upscale this and to define strategies for an integral green infrastructure network planning. So to show you the particular problem situation of this area, of this watershed, we did an analysis of land use change over time. So from 1945 till 2019, you can see here how the land use has changed. So what is coming in here is red, is the urbanization, so the urbanized areas. And you can see 1945 it was very green. There was only 1.7% urban. And now in 2019, or now we are maybe at 70%. The last date was 66.2%. So very high degree of urbanization in a short time, actually. So here we did this analysis, understanding the process of urbanization and the impact on the flood generation in this area, because flooding is one of the central problems of this watershed. We did also with hydrological models an analysis how this flooding has changed. Well, in the end, the discharge volume has increased by 80%, the peak discharge even by more than 200%, and the time to peak has been reduced, so from until the outlet of the watershed, by 25 minutes. So it used to be an hour and a half, and now it's no, it was less than an hour and a half. It was like 1 hour and 15, and now it's less than an hour at the time to peak. So it's a really flash flood situation, not much time to alert people. So problems of the past was a development focus mainly on housing, industry, and transportation, individual car transport system, led to a highly urbanized watershed, which have problems with pluvial floods, like in the picture, but also fluvial river floods in downstream areas specifically. Another particularity is that gray water from households is discharged into the rainwater system and into the river without treatment. So only the gray water, so the water from showers, washing machines, and kitchen sinks, goes on the street. And you see in the picture, this is how it looks in many areas. You have all the year flowing water in the street curb and entering the rivers without treatment. Then we have a situation of very few public and private green spaces for recreation, and we have a degraded river ecosystem and eroding riparian areas because of the high hydraulic stress caused by the large runoff volumes in the river. Okay, now I will shortly summarize. I put it here in 5 methodological steps what we did in the project. This is very brief to summarize, and actually it was not 5 steps, but I tried to explain it in 5 steps. So the first one I already mentioned, we identified a real-world lab, which served for us for joint knowledge generation and synthesis of knowledge. So with different stakeholders, we had stakeholders from the municipality, we had stakeholders from residents, from NGOs, from different associations dealing with different topics. And this was like the basis for our knowledge transfer and for the testing of nature-based solutions, which later on we tried to include in an upscaling process for other scales within the watershed. So this is a work that was really highly interdisciplinary. So the research group was composed of engineers, ecologists, economists, also from political sciences, very broad variety of disciplines, and the transdisciplinary work with different actors in this area. So I will go closely into this process. I will now step to the individual steps. So the next one was a lab scale modeling. So after understanding the real world lab and the conditions, we did several monitoring, or we did from the beginning monitoring of the area, climatic variables measured, but also flow in the rainwater system, the drainage system, modeling of the hydrological system, but also microclimatic modeling we did in this area to develop and test in scenarios nature-based solutions also that would be implemented later on. So then we did in the real world lab the prototyping. We built nature-based solutions. So we gathered knowledge on the co-design, the planning, the construction, operation, and maintenance of these prototypes. And we conveyed these insights to regional modeling. So with the local modeling and the testing of prototypes and the measurements in this area, we try to extrapolate into different neighborhoods surrounding the real world lab and sub-watersheds of the entire watershed. And then came the fifth step, which was really trying to integrate it through an analysis of the existing green infrastructure of the watershed, the solutions originally developed in the real world lab to this watershed scale. So trying to see what kind of solution fits in which place and how does it contribute to the green infrastructure that already exists, but it's not strategically planned, but still provides services. Okay, so this is a broad mix of methodologies that we used here and that were meant to understand the role of nature-based solutions in a sustainable urban water management. How could they be designed and integrated in this watershed to improve the urban water management cycle? So here, a slide on the real world lab. So we identified the area, and here here's also a publication that explains the process. What we did a lot of course, physical analysis of the area. So how is the space used? What available space exists? We focused on public space. We said all at once in the beginning, we want to implement something. We will not focus on the private land. Our primary areas will be public areas, and we need to team up with the municipality to do that, have their consent, but we want to integrate the citizens and their perspectives. So how do they want to have their neighborhood look like? So we did physical assessments, we did measurements, but we did a lot of integration on participatory processes with residents. So starting from street markets, workshops, events at inauguration of parks and many other things to develop ideas where and how and what kind of nature-based solution we could implement in this area. So to define the solution space in this area. So we had from this site-specific and field-based information on climatic hydrological conditions through measurements. We knew about the existing infrastructure, the use of space, the social organization as well, and the stakeholder interaction and identification of their preferences for development. So this, we developed a detailed plan on nature-based solutions and improvement of green infrastructure for this area. So here you see different elements like stormwater trees, for example, bioretention areas, constructed wetlands, swales, where they could be implemented. The red area is the one that we modeled and we measured. This is one closed sub-basin of this neighborhood. So here in the south, there's the river. So it's next to the river, this area. And we analyzed in this red area our nature-based solution prototypes proposals before we built them. Yeah, 25%. Okay, I have to hurry up. Okay, so we identified suitable types of nature-based solutions and placements. how they could be integrated in the existing use of the neighborhood, and we identified the multifunctional design options to have hydrological, social, ecological functions. So here you see some of the modeling. So this was the next step. We modeled the system with using a hydrological model and implementing the nature-based solutions in the model first before we built them. So to prove the concept and to evaluate the feasibility of the nature-based solutions. We did also a microclimate modeling. So our plan to implement nature-based solution, what would this mean in terms of microclimate change? So this is about another aspect of multifunctionality, what kind of additional benefits we could achieve. Then we developed and built the nature-based solution. In the end, we developed 4, which 2 of them are linked, prototype 1 and 2, with the large scale or the largest scale element next to the river, like in the downstream area of the whole drainage area of the neighborhood. We had a solution integrated in the sidewalk, just for a household level, but also for entire block level, which was based on preferences both of residents, different stakeholders, and also the municipality, where we had more proposals, but these were the ones that they agreed to be built. So here, with this experience of all this procedure in developing and looking for a local company to construct them, and later on operation and maintenance problems, which we also had, we learned a lot about the implications, the practical implications of these nature-based solutions, which have been at least new to this area. They're not totally new. We did not invent anything. There are solutions which have existed in other parts of the world, but they were certainly new for this area and probably for the country in this manner. Then the next step, this was the regional modeling. So looking how different neighborhoods, residential and industrial neighborhoods behave and what potential they have for nature-based solutions, and how much we could achieve with similar solutions to our real-world lab, adapted to like slightly different contexts in the surrounding areas. So this was about then the upscaling potential and the potential regional impact of these solutions. And the last step was then to look really at the watershed and to define a broad variety. So here we analyzed existing green infrastructure, the use of space, how green patches are connected, how is the coverage of green space for recreation, for residents, and how is the river corridor condition, for example, for ecological conditions, and integrated there the solutions that we had to develop at the different lower scales before. So this led then to precise proposals for measures within the entire watershed. In those, we also modeled with hydrological and hydraulic models to look how these measures may contribute to the flooding problem or mitigation of flooding problems in different parts of the watershed. Okay, so this was a really fast summary. I want to show you a bit what we did as outputs. So one output was, of course, a conference at the end in Costa Rica with sharing our knowledge. So I'll skip that. We had an interesting scientific part, and we had an interesting experience exchange with practitioners. The other one is what I brought to you here also is a book. So as you know from scientific projects, you will have a lot of papers published, but most of the stakeholders will not read these papers, and they are also single pieces by themselves. So we tried to do a book as kind of a popular science book that is telling a coherent story of our project. So relates the individual publications, it summarizes them, and it has links to each of the publications. So they're all open access. You can scan a QR code in the book and get the publication as well if you want to dive into a topic. So here we have 3 very important topics: the real-world lab experience, the modeling and multifunctional scenario analysis. So this is chapter 4, 5, and 6 is the governance. So this is kind of also the different domains that we worked in this project, defined by the different chapters in this book. Yeah, you can see here also, this is how the book is is established. So we are having nature-based solution, the real-world lab on the bottom, and green infrastructure through modeling and governance analysis at the top. So how we can achieve, based on our knowledge generated in the real-world lab, the modeling and the governance and upscaling to build a green infrastructure. And this part, the modeling, we also published in a way with so-called Experience Builder. It's an ArcGIS application that allows to build a web page, including web maps, so dynamic maps, where we show all of our variables, all of our data that we measured in the field, and also what we used for the modeling, also the modeling results. So what you cannot show in the publication because it's static, we present here to explore for the users and also to download the information. So this was an intention to share this knowledge in a different way as well. And mainly based on our real-world lab experience, we developed another book, which is in Spanish. It's actually a web page and a book. It was first a web page and then a book, which is based on the key activities in our real-world lab, our experience, try to somehow generalize a bit what we did so that others can maybe learn from this experience and replicate some activities. And they also have reference to how we did it in our project, but they are described in general terms, actually. So these guidelines were developed also in a process which you could call inter and transdisciplinary. So first we reflected on our work and did elaboration. We did an internal revision of these guidelines. And then we had an external revision with our stakeholders and target groups in Costa Rica. So they also looked at them and say, okay, this is meaningful how you explain it, or it's not understandable at all what you're telling us. So this was an improvement step. And finally, the documentation as a web page and as a PDF, or in some cases also a printed version of it. The web page is also now translated to English. It's an automatic translation we had to do at the very end, so maybe it's not 100% perfect, but at least you can have an idea in English as well of what we did. But the target group was in the first place Latin America, let's say, or Spanish-speaking countries, where we developed it. So he explains a bit. It's organized in categories, and there are like cookbook like recipes of different activities, how they work. Yeah. Do I have more time, or do I have to finish? Oh. Okay. I will just show you an example of, because I think this is really the transdisciplinary knowledge is very interesting. So, for example, for one of the guidelines or one process of our project was identification of an area of experimentation, which is our real-world lab, and identification of key stakeholders. So the process, how we selected the area to do the real-world lab is one of the guides. It's one guide. It's just talking about how we suggest to do this process. We made very good experiences with a participatory process, kind of like a competition-like process, so that different municipalities put proposals together. We had like you can see here this in the figure, we had a predefined format, what we wanted to have as basic information from them. And then they were free to propose different nature-based solutions and how they imagine how they could be implemented in a certain area, in the neighborhood next to the river. This was one condition. So this helped us a lot to understand the perspectives of the different municipalities. So what kind of solutions do they think of? What kind of problems do they see? What kind of areas do they choose? Because they did not choose their entire municipality, but just one neighborhood. And why did they choose it? What kind of, what degree of local organization, social organization exists? All these things we asked them, and the winner was the municipality, let's say, that offered, on the one hand, a sufficient vision. So they had a vision of change, of transformation of an area. It was important. So they were willing to do something, some substantial change at least. And it had, of course, to fit to our competencies in the team. So, of course, we, for example, we are not experts in a specific insect, for example, just to give a stupid example, and maybe if they ask for some measures that were really focused on an insect and how this population of this insect would improve, we could not address it in our team. So we had to also check what they propose. Is this something that we can make a PhD out of it or not? Well, mapping is clear. Workshops, how to organize workshops is another one. Yeah, and of course, an interesting part is the implementation of these prototypes. So how to identify the potential areas for the prototypes, how to design prototypes, and how, in this case, how to construct them. Well, this is, of course, now, as it is in a generalized form, it's not specific. We mention our experience with our prototypes, but we talk about the general issues when you want to construct something in a already developed urban area, what kind of problems you can encounter and what you should take care of when you do this. Well, this is also, I think, a very interesting part. So this is where it is. And yeah, the last mention, I have here a link. Maybe I leave it for a second. If you want, you can go to this.
The link of the book in the chat.
And this is the link to our web
so they can
platform.
scan it.
Yeah, you can scan it.